Dun, dun. All right, we're streaming. I'll tell the world. Streaming a game dev doing underwater stuff. Probably avatar stuff. So, just post that again over here. It's been a while, but that's okay. We are ready to get back into the flow of things. I could probably stream more days these days since I have way more time without my commute. Frees up about 2 hours a day. Not that my commute was 2 hours, but all of the folder all around actually going out of the house and coming back was 2 hours. So now that everybody's stuck inside, I got some free time. Maybe I'll stream more often, but my voice probably isn't up to it, especially since I'm using it less. Last week we started to set up our new avatar system a little bit more aggressively. Most of the stuff works fine, but there are some issues with getting the changes we make to the avatar to stick around when we start up the game. If we take a look at the buddy, this character here, you can see this character is big and wide, and they're currently they have weird they look weird on purpose. This is not how they're going to look in the long run. I was just testing to see whether or not they stayed looking the way they're supposed to look. And if we apply the skin changer here, you can see how they turn into whatever various colorations we've chosen for our characters. Let's go ahead and turn off the wireframe and just go back to the outline. So we can change these values however we want, and it sticks around. But what doesn't stick around are the body morphs. Not the ones I've got here with the bones, but the ones that I've got in the characters. These. So you can see that these all exist, right? But here's the problem. They won't exist when we hit play. They all reset back down to 0. I'm not sure why that is. I don't believe that used to be the case. There's something screwy going on, but it just means that what we've got to do is we've got to build the blend shapes back. And look at that. They're like flickering between 0 and something else. See that? Between 0 and what is presumably a low number. My guess is that's like 3 point something E negative 9 billion. That's my guess. I'm not sure why they'd be flickering like that. Unity's got a lot of strange idiosyncrasies that don't make any sense. Let's go ahead and copy that, and I'll just paste it over here into my search bar. Yeah, that's a 0. It just doesn't look like a 0. Don't know why you'd have a floating point math operation every frame on these. They're not controlled by the animations or anything. But the fact that they reset every single time is... Alan says, what's it like not getting angry at buses these days? Well, I mean, I could get angry at them, I suppose, but it does mean I've got a lot more free time to do this stuff. To be honest, I stopped taking the bus quite a while ago. I walked to work for the last days in which I was going to work. I walked because the buses are notoriously disease-filled, even in the best days. And I had some real bad experiences at the start of this whole shenanigans with people getting on the bus who were clearly very ill with what was suspiciously similar to what everybody was scared of. I could claim that I'm a lot more relaxed these days, but that's not true because, there's endless torrents of scary news articles, and that sort of wears on you. So this chunky character, you can see that if we max out the chunk factor so that we can see it really easily, that's not going to be very chunky. That's more chunky. I think muscle gives more chunk. And we just kind of max out the super chunk, and they look kind of like a super mutant of some variety. If we actually go and look at them, we're not going to see any of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to build the system up so that it will allow us to keep those values. And instead of... here we are. So you can see that they're now skinny again. But the bone morphs still have effect. They're still super weirdly shaped because those are bone morphs. So what we're going to do is just bake all of those into the base skin changer. So this skin changer is specifically for these elements. I'm not sure whether or not, I don't think we want to have it at the same. So we can do this morph manager, but the problem with the morph manager is that it displays all of these draggables, and I don't want it to be displaying all of these draggables while I morph the blend shapes. So we're going to create a new one, which we're going to call the blend shape manager. And it's just going to be the same basic idea, but we're blend shapes. And you're going to have to look at this strangely warped character for a while, since I am going to be sticking with them until I've figured out what things work and what things don't. Then we'll go back and we'll create a character that doesn't look quite so strange. All right, so the blend shape manager does have a few things in common with the morph manager. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and copy a lot of the morph manager's setup. Just close these things down. I love how the close button is always in a different place, and if you miss it, the interface does something random. Whatever. So here's the morph manager editor, and you can see that what this does is it draws a variety of transform handles. One transform handle for every bone in the bone structure. We're going to do the same thing for blend shapes. So we're going to need this again. But the question is, do we want to do it this way, or do we want to do it using like sliders? I think I want to put it in the game world. I do want it to feel more interactive rather than kind of looking off to the side and wondering what's up. To do that, we're going to need some secondary state. We're going to need to understand where in the game world a given morph should be shown. And that's going to be a fun thing to try and figure out. So what we're going to want is an editor, just like the morph manager editor. So we'll just duplicate it. And we will call this the blend shape manager editor. And we'll open that up. And we'll replace this and this. And here we've got a whole bunch of nonsense, but we're just going to go ahead and comment that out for now. We'll come back to it later when we need it. But it's good to have this ready so that we can kind of build it out at the same time as the rest of our blend shape system. So in order to actually build the blend shape manager, we're going to need to search for the mesh or meshes which have blend shapes on them, and then give us access to those blend shapes. So should be easy enough. All we need to do is get a list of all of the skinned mesh renderers that have blend shapes. Is shapeable spelled like that? Let me go ahead and just Google that. Is it shapeable? No, it is shapeable. Okay. It's not a word I use too often, you know? I love how it'll suggest exactly what I want, but if I am a quarter of a millisecond slow, it will refuse to ever suggest it again. It's a strange setup. All right, so what we're going to need to do here is we're eventually going to need those functions again, but we're going to ignore them for now. We're going to create a public void search. That's going to just go ahead and find the, is it context menu or menu? I think it's context menu. Yeah. So context menu, search setup. And this is going to just go through everything within us looking for skinned mesh renderers. So list skinned mesh render. Actually, we can just use shapeable. Shapeable.clear. And then we do a find components, get components in children, skinned mesh renderer. And then we we just pass it in shapeable, and it should grab all of them. We'll go ahead and tell it to give us even the ones that are turned off. Let's just take a look here. I think I'm forgetting something. No, that seems right, doesn't it? Oh, it's just backwards. True, comma, shapeable. That'll get us all of them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through them, and we're just going to remove the ones that don't have shape keys. We could also put them in a separate list and then just add the ones that do have shape keys. It's functionally the same thing. I guess that would be a little bit cleaner, just because we wouldn't have to be doing like manipulating the index here. That's fine though. So here's you can see that the issue here with the skinned mesh renderers is that the skinned mesh renderers will handle the blend shapes, get and set, but they won't tell you what they are. You actually have to go and get the shared mesh and ask it. Blend shape count, see? So if there's no blend shapes, then we're going to want to remove that one from the list. So we'll just go ahead and give ourselves a debug.log found shapeable.count blend shaping meshes. And we'll just save that. We'll go back over here and test it out. Now I don't think there are any blend shapes on anything besides the body of this particular character. We'll go ahead and try it though. My only question is whether or not I botched this, because I might have to... Nope, it works fine, okay. Because I have an editor, and it's possible to accidentally set up your editor so that this doesn't work anymore. Here's search. Oh, I didn't realize that was a thing. Hold on. Now I know how to do that. I mean, it was obvious. I've just never tried. So now that we've done that, we should be able to select it. Oh, fuck, Unity. Come on, seriously? It's gone back to crashing. Found one blend shaping meshes. So now what we need to do is add all of the blend shaping meshes. We need to add all of their blend shapes to a list of blend shapes. This is something we need to mask. We can't just use the basic fundamental mesh for that data, because we're going to have to be able to remap these blend shapes to other meshes that have blend shapes of the same name. So for that, we're going to just create another class that we're going to just use. It's going to be a minor data class, so I'm not going to even bother putting it in its own file. Blend shape mapper, and we'll give that a system.serializable. Absolutely critical in this case. And we'll just have a public string blend shape name. And then we'll have public string mesh name, which may or may not be useful later. I'm not going to worry about it right now. Then we're going to want to actually map it to a given skinned mesh. Which we will have to obviously remap if we use a different skinned mesh, which we'll do later. Then we're just going to give it a public float value, which is going to be between 0 and 100. I don't believe we can go any higher than that. I might try it unbounded just to see whether or not we can go negative and above 100, but I believe that this is mapped to 100. Probably bound to 0 to 100. And that's all we're going to need. All we have to do is actually create that list. So to do that, we're going to have a public list blend shape mapper. Blend shapes equals new list blend shape mapper. God damn it. For some reason, it's underlined in... Well, I guess it was just being barfy. These should be both in the namespace diver, I think. Let's go ahead and try it. Hold on, this is not in the namespace diver. Let me see whether or not I've been putting them in the namespace or not. Hello? Can you please do something? I don't know what was going on there. I guess it was recompiling really aggressively or something because that was really slow. So if we take a look, this is not in a namespace. So we're not going to put the new one in a namespace either. So Blendshaping Mapper now has a list. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through Blendshaping Mapper when we're setting this up. We are going to add any that exist. We're going to delete any that don't exist. And it should be relatively straightforward. So the first step is going to be to go through each of these meshes in turn and start to create a list of new blend shapes. Then what we'll do is we'll go in and map their values if they happen to already exist. And the reason for that is because if we do a search and setup, we want to map existing blend shape values to new blend shapes if they happen to have the same name, if they're compatible. That way, if we dump a new model in, as long as the blend shapes have the same names, it'll just map straight across. Very basic stuff, right? List blend shape mapper. Map equals new list blend shape mapper. We're now gonna go through all of these. So for each skinned mesh renderer SMR in shapeable, we're just gonna take a look at every single one of the blend shapes. So for int a equals 0, a is less than SMR dot mesh. Let's go ahead and just int max equals SMR dot shared mesh dot blend shape count. Let's go ahead and actually do the whole shebang here. Is skinned mesh a thing, or is it just a, yeah, it's just a mesh. Mesh equals SMR dot shared mesh. And max is going to be, well, I guess we're not going to worry. Well, let's go ahead and do it. Mesh.shared. Sorry. I haven't been having very much caffeine recently. I've been trying to wean myself off. I had a dose today to try and get ready for the stream. But I'm not really as awake as I am when I normally get to go outside and work at the office. All right, so now what we're going to do is create a new skinned mesh. No, it's a blend shape mapper. Now you can see that this doesn't take any arguments. Let's go ahead and set up. Thank you, I didn't want that. Trying to click on an empty line and it says, oh, you mean you want to know what serializable means? No, I don't. And what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and just take in the blend shape name. I think that there's actually a way to do this fast. Like there's some kind of C# template to tell it to take these arguments in just straight up as initialization. Let's go ahead and just take the skin mesh renderer. That'll have the name in it. And we'll go ahead and assume that the shape is going to be at 0. This dot blend shape name equals blend shape name. This dot renderer equals renderer. This dot mesh name equals renderer dot mesh dot name. There we go. And we'll just go ahead and say value equals 0. Now I'm almost positive that there is a way to set this up with just like magic boilerplate that I don't happen to remember. But since I don't happen to remember it, we won't use it. So now that this takes a couple of arguments, we're going to have to be able to do it. But the problem is this, in order to serialize and unserialize it, Unity needs to have the ability to do this with no arguments. So we're going to go ahead and just allow it to take in nulls. And that should allow it to properly serialize and deserialize in Unity. It would have eventually complained. We wouldn't have had to worry about that too much. Typo in string, tains only. What? Okay, if you say so. Anyway, to pass this in, we're going to go ahead and say mesh.get blend shape name, and then we're passing it in an index, which is A, and then we're going to pass it in the mesh render that we're using, SMR. Then we're just going to add that to the map. So map.add, there. That should do it. At the end, we're going to have a list. Map now contains all our blend shapes for all our meshes. Just check to see if existing map contains values for those. So in that case, what we'll do is we'll go through our existing map and see whether or not it maps, it counts. So to do that, we're going to need a simple search function. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through all of the blend shapes that we've got and see if one exists. And the reason we made it a class is because that makes these kinds of comparisons easier than if it was a struct. And there we go. We now have the ability to get a blend shape. And that's going to be of value to us. We could also get just the value if we wanted, but I think it's okay if we do it this way. So for each blend shape mapper m in map, blend shape mapper existing equals get blend shape m dot blend shape name m dot mesh name. If existing, then we want to say m dot if existing does not equal null. It's not a mono behavior, so it doesn't accept the inherent null comparison. If existing exists, then m.value equals existing.value. Very basic, right? And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to set our setup to this. So it's going to be blend shapes equals map, and then we're going to just actually apply them. No, you are incorrect. Apply. Obviously, we don't have an apply yet, so we're going to go ahead and make one. Public void apply. We're going to go ahead and make this a menu item. For each blend shape mapper m in blend shapes, apply m. Now the reason we're doing it like this is because public void apply blend shape mapper map is because this will allow us to hot update when we drag a widget around and we only want to change one blend shape at a time. This will allow us to do that relatively easily. So when we do that, we just tell the blend shape to apply. Of course, the blend shape doesn't have an apply, so we're going to need to add that. If skinned mesh renderer, if renderer equals null, actually an inherent comparison is possible there. If not renderer, then debug.log error blend shape mapper has no renderer return. Otherwise, renderer.set blend shape, and we're going to want to just pass in the value. Hold on, I think that I have two arguments here. Yeah, index. So in order to do that, we're going to need to do renderer.sharedMesh dot get blend shape by name, blend shape name, and then we're going to pass it in the value. There we are. That should allow it to just work, right? So now the only issue is that we don't have any sort of ability to apply these. I will have to just create that, but first I want to test and see if this works, and if it works, we'll then go ahead and create it. That said, I drank a lot of caffeine, so I may have to take a short bathroom break. That would be a first for me, right? We're going to go ahead and keep at it for a while until it becomes unmanageable. Search setup. Here's our blend shape. You can see we've got these. If we were to take this value and set it to 500, we should now be able to apply it. And you can see that most of the blend shapes went away. To be honest, this doesn't look like it is set up as particularly masculine. Okay, so it was working. It's just that it's not a very strong shape key. Not when your shoulders are morphed like that. If we were going to, we could get the chunky going here. Let's go ahead and put in a 500 for the chunky. And I think it's become clear that it is capping at 100. It's not bothering to change past that point, which is fine. It's just something that means that we have to push our shape keys pretty aggressively when we are building them. So now what we really want to do is display these shape keys off to the side in roughly the right spot for the character. That said, you know what I've got to do? I have got to take a real short little bathroom break. So I'm going to switch over to Phoenix Wright for a second and mute you. I'll be right back. Bah. Okay, I'm back. That's what I get for drinking that much caffeine. Okay, so it wasn't actually that much caffeine. It was just a large volume of low caffeine liquid. I usually drink cold brew, which has like 1,000,000 grams of caffeine per 1.5 grams of coffee. So drinking this ordinary stuff takes a lot, you know. We're back. What we need to do is we need to be able to take these blend shapes and display them off to the side. Some of these blend shapes are more attached to certain parts of the body. Like if it has top or bot, that means it's on the top or the bottom, whereas otherwise it's kind of in the middle somewhere. And that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to sort these based on whether they're on the top, in the middle, or on the bottom. So to do that, we are going to have a custom sorting routine, which I believe I remember how to do. I think I do. We'll find out shortly. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if a.blendShapeName.contains top. So we're going to say int val equals a.blendShapeName.contains top 1. Otherwise, a.blendShapeName.contains bottom -1 or 0. And now that block of logic says it's going to be either a 1, a -1, or a 0, depending on whether or not it contains these figures. The only question is I don't remember whether or not I've been strict with keeping it capitalized. Yeah, I have. So we'll go ahead and figure that out. So val A, val B, 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 and then we're just going to return val A minus val B. It might be the other way around. It might be val B minus val A. I can never remember. Doesn't matter. So all we're going to do now is we are going to sort these. And now I believe that I can pass any function here. I need to do this comparer, right? I think I just pass it apply. But boy, I don't remember. No. Cannot choose method from method group. Oh no, it's not apply, it's sorter. My bad. I was looking at the bottom of the screen. I think that does it. Let's go ahead and find out. C# has one of the least intuitive methods of sorting. I think you can do it using link, but link was after my time, and I never bothered to really master it. I should probably try mastering it at some point here. So if we do a search setup, you can see that the bottom is on the top and the top is on the bottom. So that's actually how we want it, believe it or not, because our core here is at the feet. So when we actually put like icons off to the side, we'll just list them starting at the feet and moving up. So this is not bad at all. Let's go ahead and create ourselves some morphs, some stuff. For int a equals 0, a is less than me.morphs, a++. What we're going to want to do is create a widget for each of these in turn. So you can see here what we do is we do this editor GUI begin change check. We do that around the entire block of editor GUI elements. And then at the end, we just apply if any of them were marked dirty. I think we're going to do that again, just because it's a little bit simpler than trying to check each one in turn and having a dozen different possible set dirties. Oh, we actually do it individually. Never mind. Well, okay, we'll do it individually again since that worked before. So we begin the change check, and at the end we just cancel out the change check. So we're going to just block that out there. We'll come back to it in a minute. In here, what we're going to need to do is create a widget at the correct point next to our character. And so we're going to go ahead and move them off to screen right, which is character left, and then start to move them up. So for that, we're going to need to be able to use this Sorry, here it is, handles, transform handle. This transform handle allows us to do all of the various elements. We don't need all of the elements. The only one we need is either motion or scaling. We don't really need any of the others. If we take a look at the handles, we got a couple of other handle related things. We got a position handle, a radius handle. That's probably perfect. Let's try the radius handle. Let's see if it seems good. So the radius handle has a couple of arguments. It's got a rotation, which are going to go ahead and make identity. It's got a position, which we're going to calculate out. And then it's got a radius, which is going to be our bool. So, sorry, our blend shape. So it's going to be me.blendshapes a.value. We might multiply that or divide it depending on how big this is here. So in order to get the position, we're going to need a vector 3 pos. That's a 2. There's a 3. That's going to equal our position. So that would be me.transform.position plus off to one side, me.transform.left, or right, I guess. And then plus transform.up. Oh, I guess it's vector 3.up times a. But we actually want to divide that by something like 4, 3, something like that. Otherwise, it'll just be too tall. We've only got a 2 meter tall character. We don't need it to go off into infinity. Maybe make that 4. That said, we are also going to want to type in some text so that we can tell which it is. I don't know whether or not there's handles.text available. I know that there is a way to do text. I just don't remember it. Probably a gizmos. Well, it's definitely not in handles. Can I use gizmos in here? I don't know whether I can use gizmos in here. No, that's GUI texture. Let's go ahead and just Google it. Unity text scene script editor. Text-based scene files. No. In scene script editor. On scene GUI. No, I want the one that allows us to draw text. So Unity draw text in scene view. How do I draw debug text? Is it handles.label? Okay. Of course, it's not called text. It's called label. Whatever, it's fine. And that's going to be me.blendshapes.a.name. All right, so there we go. That should allow us to draw what we're trying to do here. Of course, it's not going to change anything at the moment, but that should be okay. Let's find out how it looks. Grind. And you can see that now we've got these over on the side. They're drawing in black, which is not an ideal color for this. I can probably change that. And you can see that this isn't changing at all because the size is wrong. If we pop in a size, you can see that it becomes way too large. So we're going to want to scale that down by orders of magnitude. So if we come down here, we're going to want to just take that value and divide it by 100, maybe even 1,000. We'll find out in a second here. Okay, so right now we've got these two quite large, and you can see that that's just large enough that we're going to lose track of which one is which. So we're going to actually bring that down a little bit more. But I want to change the color of the text. I really don't want this label to be in black. I want it to be in white. I don't believe that it's going to let me GUI style. So there is the opportunity to pass it in a GUI style. I think I can say GUI style.none. Do I have to create a GUI style? I can never remember how to do this. GUI style. Style equals new GUI style. Style dot. There should be a font color. There's not. Is it like foreground color? Not. Can't be that. I can probably just use rich text, I suppose. Can I specify it using rich text? Let's find out. I think that's how you do it in rich text. I can never remember. Let's just do a search real fast. Rich text unity color. Well, you can use brackets. Color equals. Okay, you can say like green. Let's go ahead and say white. Let's find out whether or not rich text is enabled. No, it's not. We might be able to just enable it here. Style.richText equals true. And then we'll pass that in and see whether or not that fixes this. Because I would, in fact, like to be able to change the colors. Oh, there we are. So now we've got it all set up with rich text enabled. That's going to be a lot easier. But you can see that instead of passing it in the Blendshaped name, I stupidly I passed it in the word Blendshaped name. Classic error. There we are. Now the only problem is we got to finish hooking it up. So to hook it up, what we're going to need to do is when the check is changed, when it happens, we are going to want to take that handle and fix it up. I think I need to set this. No, it says handles dot. Oh, I'm passing it in by reference with this bastard. Okay. So can I pass it in with reference here? Oh, not the label, the radius handle. No, this doesn't take a reference. What does it return? A float, okay. I guess we don't need to bother with the begin and change end check because we're just going to do it manually. So if the value does not equal the result, then what we're going to do is we're just going to set it manually here, which we'll do by saying me.blendshapes a.value equals result times 500. And then we're going to say me.apply me.blendshapes a. We could also just say blendshapes a dot apply. There we are. That should work. Shall we find out? All right, so yep. So now what we got to do is we got to lock it. So in order to lock it, we're going to go over into the Blend Shape Manager and we're just going to create an intermediary. So right here we've got this value. We're going to go ahead and make that an underscore value. And then we're going to put in a getter and setter. The reason we're leaving that as public is because we might want to debug it someday. I don't think that's... It is called value. I don't actually know whether this is going to work, because this might be an infinite loop. It's blue, so maybe it's fine. Blue should mean global. And that should make it so that it doesn't allow us to put in values of like 500 or whatever. Oh, I moved a rock. Let's not move the rock. Yeah. So here you can see that I can set the values, and when it goes negative, it just goes positive again. See that? That's pretty easy. Only issue I've got is that when it's really small, it's really hard to drop it down to 0. So what I might do is clamp it between 10 and 100, and if it's at 10, I'll presume that it's 0, which is a little bit of a hack. But if you're going to apply a blend shape at less than 10%, you're not going to be getting too much out of it. So let's go ahead and try it. So value equals meetup blend shapes.value, and then what we're going to do is if fuck you, if value is less than or equal to 0.1f, value equals 0, and then we say value divided by equals 100 or 500, and then result. And then down here what we're going to do is this. We're going to go ahead and do the same task. So result times equals 500. If result is less than or equal to 0.1f, result equals 0. And then there we go. But that will allow us to snap to 0 a little bit easier rather than having a whole bunch of dirty like 1% that we can't adjust. It didn't seem to work, did it? Did it not recompile? Oh, it's not between 0 and 1. It's between 100, 0 and 100. So that's what we want. We might even raise that to 20 or even 25, depending on how the snapping feels. So that's up and then down, and it's pop. See how it goes? Pop, pop. Let's raise it to 25 and see how that feels. Yeah, that's better. And now we can edit this character as we see fit just by dragging these lines around. And that allows us to quickly create a character without having to worry too much about twiddling with values on the side. The only thing left for us to do is to make it so that when we actually hit play, these values stay, because they are going to revert to 0. As you can see, the character is no longer pudgy. So what we're going to need to do is just have it so that when we actually start, these are reapplied. Notice that these are unapplied even outside of our start, so that's kind of interesting. Either way, just come back on over here to our blend shape manager and add in either a start or an awake. I think a start is probably fine. That should allow us to, that worthless fog plugin is slowing everything down. I wish I knew how to get rid of it. Oh well. So if we pause now and we go and we find our buddy, it's not a worthless fog thing. It's just that it's not intended for water fog. It's only intended for, I actually can't tell. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and adjust it a little bit more severely so that we can tell. So if we make them big, just, that rock is in the way. No skinniness, just chunkiness. This is a strange visual, though. There's something wrong with it. You see that? I guess that's just because it's putting a circle around it. So now you can see we've made them as beefy as our current morphs allow. We should be able to tell right away if that beef is staying or not. It is not. It is not staying. That is not the same level of beef if we were to change it. Oh, we can actually disable the weight range clamping. That's cute. Okay. So, in fact, we could push this further if we decided we wanted to. We'll go ahead and leave it for now, though. The problem is this doesn't seem to actually be working. Something is setting these values back to 0. It's not one of my scripts. It's something in Unity. And I think the only way around that is going to be to tell Unity to run my shit after it runs whatever bullshit it is doing, because obviously it is... where's the script order? There it is. Obviously it is doing something dumb. So we're going to go ahead and just drop the blend shape manager in at the end here. There it is. You can see there's a lot of root motion stuff in here, a lot of OB stuff. We're not going to be using OB. We're definitely going to keep using root motion. I don't know how to get rid of Aura. It doesn't seem to want to uninstall. Also, I doubt I need your tilt input, but at least it's not adware. Unity used to automatically install ad support into every project anybody ever created. All right, so now that I've paused it, and I go over into the buddy here, and that didn't work. That's really weird. So the weird thing about this is if I were to go over to the buddy, I want to see whether or not these get properly changed, but I can't tell because we're moving. So I'm going to let the buddy come over to us, or rather I'm going to move us over to the buddy. So if we do this, we can see where we are. We're over in room 3 because I was doing some kind of stuff there. Move ourselves back to room 1. There's our buddy. So if we just take our game or scene, if we just take this, we can unpause, but the problem is it's going to lock our cursor. See that? So it's actually quite challenging for us to edit any of these values because while we're running, our mouse is locked, and while we're not running, we're not going to get any updates. If we come down here to the buddy, there we are, we can just tell it to apply and see whether or not that does anything. It did not. And we're not getting any sort of values here. We're going to go ahead and we don't need this anymore. Is it because we're aiming at the shared mesh? And we need to be aiming... No, wait, we're not aiming at any mesh. This is about the mesh renderer. there's something about this mesh renderer where setting these values, no, not that one, setting these values in play mode doesn't work. But we're not really doing anything complicated. We're just saying, hey, mesh renderer, set blend shape weight. This is like super basic. What happens if we make it set it in every single update? I would really like to know what's resetting these values. Maybe I'll do a search for that after I check this. Look at that. It's not working. That is not a chubby character. That is a skinny character with really, really wide shoulders because we were testing that. So something is preventing this from getting set in play mode. Unity blend shape reset in play mode broken. Why is my mechanism... Is it an animator? Why would it be doing that? Well, this is like 5 years old. But let's try and see if we can create a mask that works a little bit for us here. It sounds like, for some reason, it's assuming that the masks are part of the animation, or rather the blend shapes are part of the animation, which is strange because you can't actually animate the blend shapes directly in Blender, so I don't know why it would think that. If we do a scale-free humanoid here, the character is already off limits. See, Diver C is not marked. So why would it be applying? I mean, what happens if we turn Diver C back on? You think that'll work? Because maybe what's happening is we're attempting to set it via... No, that didn't work either. What happens if we manually change these values? They should work, right? Well, no, they're being reset every frame. Unity blend shapes reset every frame. Thanks in advance from someone from 3 years ago who never got an answer. Working with blend shapes. Animation blend shapes. Unity timeline stops refreshing. None of these are even vaguely valuable to me. This might actually be something I just broke. Hold on. Cold Zero says, try late update. I'm sorry. I had the thing open in a different spot, and I couldn't see chat. You can animate blend shapes in Blender using bones as drivers for blend shape animation. Yeah, but then those actually disconnect in Unity, and I don't have those bones. So why would the blend shapes be part of the mask? Sorry about that, Colt Zero. I didn't intend to ignore you. I was trying to read up on the issues, and I've only got so much screen space. Okay, so late update works, which means there's something in the normal update. Yeah, that's definitely a chunky character. There's something in the normal update that is causing these to be reset to 0 every frame. Resetting them to whatever I'm trying to set them to late every frame is a really, really rough fix. That's a patch I shouldn't need. So the question is, what's resetting them every frame? It could be the fact that there's an animator, but the animators never used to do that. I don't see any signs that this animator does anything interesting or special. No, not the asset store. That thing is useless. So, I'm trying to think about why this would happen. Why would we be doing this? It's got to be recent, because I've been using this approach for literally 5 years. It's just one of those things that Unity decided to just break because, fuck you, right? And it's not. There's nothing in any search. Unity blend shapes resetting every. Come on, give me. Nobody apparently has any of these issues. It's just me. Maybe nobody else has ever tried to use blend shapes in Unity. It's strange. Unity is probably the most popular game development platform in the world. And every day I find something where it's like a basic setup, and I sort of think that I must be the only person using Unity. If I'm going to be doing this, I might as well be using something much less popular, since I can never find any of the solutions that I would like. So I asked Google to do an advanced search, and their advanced search shows everything except for the one thing I need. I don't know. We used to be able to ask Google to search for something within a time. Okay, so it's not in settings. It's not in advanced search. It's under tools. All right, so. And once again, I'm sorry if I'm ignoring you in chat there. Working with blend shapes. Well, I mean, according to these, it should just work. They're using it in update. Yeah, they're telling you how to animate it, but our animations shouldn't contain it. Let's go ahead and take a look here. If we go into Buddy, which should contain all of our animations, we have all of these animations, and they should. There we are. You can see that they've got all this missing stuff, but that's fine. What we're looking for is blend shape nonsense. Because I don't believe that Blender exports blend shape animations. I think you have to use like a workaround where you do bones and drive them. Look, there it is. This is a blend shape. When did that start happening? Now, admittedly, I exported this. This is not Blender. I had to manually export the FBX. Let's go ahead and do it again. Let's export the FBX, but this time without the blend shapes. I'm not sure. I mean, it must be recent. Or no, it's just a change in protocol. I'm not used to this because... yeah, Colt Zero says that he was trying to make it animate based off of Vizims. I've done some of that stuff too. I'm not very good at it though. So here's the Diversey FBX. What we're going to do is we're going to re-export the Diversey Animations FBX and try and get this to not contain blend shapes since we're not animating the blend shapes. That's Diver back. There we go. Just let me pop you to Phoenix Write for a second while I make sure the files are set up for all of this junk. FBX, diversity FBX. All right, I'll bring you back. Yeah, it should be fine. So here's our diversity animations FBX. And we don't want to... Here's the baked animations. Keel bones, NLA strips, all actions, force and king, sampling rate. It's not letting me... There's no sign of this including those blend shapes. Do you see any shapes here? I don't see any shapes. If we actually look at the animations, do we have the shapes in the animation at all? Maybe I somehow accidentally added them using a new Blender technique that I wasn't aware of, which would actually be kind of useful. No. No, there's no blend keys. I'm not sure why exporting this animation into Unity, I export this as an FBX and it exports with blend keys, blend shapes. Why would it do that? What's worse, or Unity is automatically generating them. I mean, that's possible. I think what happened. So what happened in the old versions of this, when you had a blend shape actually applied here in Blender, like if I were to select this character, if I were to select this character and go down into the blend shapes, here they are. If you were to actually apply the blend shapes, they would be applied in Unity permanently. Like they would never, they wouldn't be reverted back down to 0. So I'm sort of thinking what this is it's a way to try and tell Unity if something needs to be applied. It might be some other stuff too. I heard that if I disallow relative, it might work, but that seems like an excessive thing. Is there anything for it in the Unity import options? Let's find out. So if we go into the diversity FBX, import blend shapes, that part's fine. Blend shape normals, that's fine. Oh my gosh, I drank so much coffee. That's right, their animation system is just broken now. I can't get it to show me anything. So I don't know whether or not there are options for it. It just doesn't work anymore. I might download the more recent version of Unity now that I'm no longer using the import. There's been 3 minor updates. I was holding off because it used to be that I was using the rehacked version of the Unity automatic importer, but this is an FBX, so there's not really any reason to keep doing that. Such a bizarre problem. For now, we'll just keep setting it late. We'll just go ahead and fill the code with like arguments. So really the problem here is twofold. First off, the blend shapes are being included in the animations for some reason. And second off, the setup I've got for for masking these animations isn't properly working. So if you look at the mask, here it is. This mask specifically excludes, it used to not, but I used to, but then I did that. Even when I exclude the diver C, it includes the diver C. Now, part of that might be because this avatar is using direct links. I don't know. Yeah, I understand why you did that. It's not something I've ever had to do because my animations have never included blend shapes. I don't have any bones driving them, and I've never bothered to create that setup, so I don't even know how I would. I've never needed to do that. My question is, maybe it thinks that this diver C is different from this diver C, and technically it is. But they're named the same thing, and this should be name driven. So I'm not sure why it's broken. Super annoying. I wish it would let us do whitelist versus blacklist. That way I would know for sure. But if the bones work, then it should work. Because I mean, I'm specifically not applying this to the scale bones, see? And that works fine. So I can't see why it would fail to work for the mesh, except for the fact that they didn't friggin' think about it and they botched it when they were doing their importer. Maybe they fixed it by now. I'll download the patch and see. But for now, this works fine. If we look over at the buddy, we can now shape the buddy into whatever we want. We don't yet have all of the colliders and stuff that we're going to need. So we're going to want to deal with that later. But first, we're going to go ahead and delete the diver. Boom! Now, we're going to get some errors, but that's fine. We're going to go down into our meshes and drop the diver back in. Diver C. Drop it into the buddy. Boom. Now, we look here. You can see how it's got missing. Just going to drop those in. Later on, we'll do some auto detect. I think that's all I needed to set. Drop in model. There it is. Diver status handler. I think we need to drop that in too. I think it's just the tentacles. That should bring it right back, but we do have to reset up these values. So we're going to rescan. Search setup. Boom. And you can see that we got our chunkiness back. Now that our bones are no longer radically off base, you can see how chunky this character would be. If we go over here into the morph manager, we're going to rescan it. Scan base state. Oh, I forgot to actually set it with an armature. Why is this not working? There we go. I'll have to polish that a little bit. You can see that we now have all of these values where we can adjust the character to look however we want. And it should work. We've got a real plump character here. We've given them all of the beefier morphs just to try and get those morphs to feel okay, just to be visible. So if we bring that down, we can see what this character looks like without any morphs applied, just the default character. And there's no particular reason why we would have to set this character up. We could just let the player set it up as they prefer, right? But let's go ahead and create like a chunkier character just because it's underwater, right? And that's kind of like, it would make sense for, you know, kind of a undersea characters always feel a little bit chunky, right? Unfortunately, we don't have, oh, I guess Be Chunky is general purpose. It doesn't really chunk up the arms, though. We may have to remap that to chunk up the arms a little bit. So now we've got that. We'll just set this, update the renderer. So that's how the character should look. Let's see whether that's how the character does look. Thick, says Colt Zero. Sure, I mean, it should support any size character, any shape character. The question is, are you still thick? Yeah, you're still pretty thick. All right, so that seems to work. It's far from ideal, but it's all set up. The only thing left for us to do is to create the add-ins, because there are a number of things still missing from this setup. Would you like to know one of them? I'll show it to you. Whoa! Oh, I added a collider to this object specifically for testing something. There's no colliders in this that make sense. There is a collider in us because I added one at the last time to do some testing, but it's not in the right spot. It needs to be attached to bones. So in order for us to do that, what we're going to need to do is have a collider inserter where we are going to need to put it into the right bones. And if our bones are going to be named the same thing most of the time, we can just do it. All we're going to need to do is figure out what our collider prefab should be. And I think a sphere is better for us than a capsule. So let's create a sphere. This is much, much too large. We're going to go ahead and shrink it way down. Actually, we're not going to. We're just going to leave it as a collider. Make it 0.15, thereabouts. And we're going to call this a default collider proxy. And we'll drop that into our prefabs. Shaboom. So with the default collider proxy setup, what we'll do is we'll create another script which will handle that particular set. So to do that, we'll go here into the driver. You might be thinking, look at all of these disparate scripts. Aren't these going to be an issue? No. What we're going to do, we're going to create a plugin player object, a plugin buddy object. They're going to have a whole bunch of this stuff on them. And then when we hit play, all of that stuff is going to delete itself as it sets up the model that we drop in. Should be pretty straightforward. So yes, we're going to go with one more distinct diver script. I'm going to call this a diver, not a fiver, a diver collider setup. Pop that open. And just do a public game object collider prefab. And then we're going to do a public list string bones to attach to. And then here in start, we'll just go ahead and do it. So for each string name in bones to attach to, we'll call it string targ. We are going to find a game object, get. Can we get by name, or do we have to get and then search? I think we have to get them all and then search. So list game object obj equals get components in children game object. Oh. And then what we'll do is we'll simply search for the one that matches. If g.name equals targ, then we're going to simply put a collider into it. So game object new collider equals game object.instantiate. Oh, there is a game object.find, but I think that searches the whole scene. Instantiate collider prefab. And then we should be able to drop it into a transform of our choice, which is obviously going to be g.transform. I think that's all we need to do. Only problem here is that I'm not sure that this is going to actually work, because I think we may need to set it up with offsets. We may need to create something more complicated. We'll go ahead and try it out first. We can always adjust it later. So we're actually going to name this something else. So that we can call it. I can't use my fingers. My brain just shut off. I don't know if you could hear that. Right, so there we have a diver collider setup. I haven't really tried to do actual dev in a long time, says Colt Zero, but I'm doing game modding now. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Modding is great fun. I used to do a lot of modding. I still do mod games when they have a nice modding interface, but I've stopped going out of my way to do it. So now it's like, oh, the game allows me to create levels or whatever. That's great. But I'm interested in... Space Engineers has just rolled out a new level design system. But the problem is that Space Engineers is such a kludge to play that I'm not sure I want to create levels in Space Engineers, create missions in Space Engineers. It's just like you can't really get a grasp on how it's going to play out because they're so loosey-goosey. There's so many glitches and it's so wide open, you know? I don't know. Seems like it's a fun idea, but don't know. Maybe I'll try it out later. Anyway, we're going to drop the diver collider setup in here. Like so. And our collider prefab is going to be our favorite new object, the default collider proxy. Bones to attach to, we're going to go ahead and just create a few. If we open up diver C armature, we can get a list of all of the bones, right? So let's go ahead and just add some of them in, like chest and head. There's a pelvis, yeah, pelvis. Let's just go ahead and see how that ends up working. So if we take a look, you can see that they are in strange places. If we do this, the existing colliders, none. We can't actually grab game objects. Those are, these circles are not the circles we created. These are interface circles, which we're also going to have to adjust later on. Just hit play and try one more time here. There we go. That's better. So Colt says, I'm doing PPC assembly code modding for Wind Waker. Got into Homebrew with the GameCube, and that taught me more about game modding scene as well. That brought him more into the game modding scene as well. So that's some pretty hardcore modding. It's the exact opposite of the kind of modding I'm doing these days. So you can see that we've got these 3 balls. These are the 3 balls in question running down the center line here. But the problem is that they're not really in a very good set of spaces. They're not too bad. Maybe we can live with it. We're going to need to apply them to the legs as well, the feet here. The question is, where on the feet do we apply them? And I think we want to do foot L and foot R. So we're going to go ahead and try that. And obviously, we no longer need this capsule, so let's delete it. So let's see whether or not those colliders do their job by trying to bump into some stuff. You notice that we didn't apply a collider to the hands or the backpack. We can always apply them later as we need to. Yeah, seems to work fine. So the only issue I've got is that I don't think we've got a light. And now the problem is the light needs to be attached to the head along with a bubble thing, like a bubble effect. That currently doesn't exist, but it seems like it would be a good place to put it. It should go in this same script. So we'll just create another prefab. Collider prefab. Fucking hell, let me click on stuff. Click game object. Mask effects. Tooltip, light and bubbles, etc. And we'll go ahead and have that always attached to something called head. So we won't worry about that too much. I guess we'll add it to existing colliders as well, for reasons that we'll go into later. GameObject.instantiate mask effects. Cold Zero thinks it's funny when I swear. I guess that's because I have a really laid-back voice, but that's because my voice gives out really easily. So if I talk loudly, I only get maybe 45 minutes of talking at all. Not really the best person to be streaming. I'm got a very low... my voice doesn't really work out for that. So the mask effects that we're going to need, let's build them. The easiest way to build them is to go into our Diverse Seas head. There it is. And create it in here. That way it'll be in the right spot. So if we take a look at our mask effects, I'm not sure why it's zoomed that far out, but here is our head. The mask effects is going to stay at 0, 0, 0 with no rotation and no scaling. That means that inside of this, we can put all the things we need to put, including a spotlight, which we will move into vaguely the right position. And we'll have to try to maybe adjust this a little bit later, but it should be a little bluer. There we go. And we're also going to want to have the bubble particle effect. So I'm not sure whether or not we have bubble particle effects anymore. We should, but we might not. I believe that we were just grabbing it from one of my kits. Cult Zero prefers my voice to a lot of others. Yeah, my voice doesn't draw in the crowds, but it is relatively enjoyable to listen to. Why is all of this stuff here? I don't need any of this shit. At least they're showing it to me now. But where is my... Oh, there it is. So, it's not Amplify Shader Editor. It's not Aura. Is it Psychosis? I don't think so. No, I think that's like shadow stuff. It's not the rock pack. Underwater shaders, underwater effects. Of course, here it is. And what we want to do is grab the bubbles. I'm not sure which of these we want, so we'll just drop all three of them in, and then we'll choose which one works best. So here's bubbles large. Here's bubbles medium. Here's bubbles small. I think we were using bubbles small. But I guess it doesn't really matter because we can tweak it however we want. But that's definitely too big. Let's go for medium. We're going to unpack this because we're going to want to adjust it. And I don't want to adjust it. I don't want to adjust the prefab. So as we look down here, what we're going to want to do is play it in world space, and that should work out. Just to test it, if we rotate this, no, you can see how it's not actually coming out in world space, it's coming out in local space. The problem is that local space is wrong, even though it's clearly set to world space. There's probably just another place where I have to set it. Render alignment view. So the problem here is that this start speed here is relative to the starting direction of the object, and I don't want that. I want that I want that to be relative to the world. I guess I could do a velocity over lifetime in world space. Well, that's definitely going to work better. Random between two constants. Put that back into where it was before. And that should be something that can survive any sort of orientation that our head goes into. It's funny that it's velocity over lifetime when very clearly it is just velocity. Interesting. Either way, we're going to go ahead and Colt Zero says, as far as game dev goes, my latest idea is scaled back. But the problem is that the idea is based around an art form he doesn't fully understand. I've got loads of fun ideas, but the problem is that it takes so much time to develop a game, especially when you are gainfully employed. If I was retired, I'd probably start up a Patreon, and I'd work on this game, 4 or 5 hours a day. But if I did that, I'd knock it out in like 2 months. A game this scale, it's not as large as it looks. But I'm not like that, unfortunately. I got other shit to do, especially playing other video games. You don't want to stop doing that. Anyway, here's our prefabs. Here in tech, we're going to drop in mask effects. And then we're going to delete mask effects. And then we're going to tell it that you're going to use these mask effects. And then we're going to hit play, and we're going to see how that lines up. Boom. So we should now see bubbles coming out of our top. We do. That's pretty good. We got a light. Good. Everything seems to be working. Yeah. Great. So our plug-and-play setup is all ready to go. The only things missing now are IK hands and the effects that we get when we brush against the ground, which we'll just add those to the colliders. But basically we want to have silt come up when we brush against anything that is maybe sand colored or whatever. We'll have to think about the best way to do that. But we had that before. I've long since gotten rid of it, but it should be relatively easy to re-add. The other question we've got is there was one more thing I needed to add. Did I say it and forget about it? Colt Zero says the art form is origami. I once I had a lot of ideas for origami-based games. Though my favorite one is the idea of spaceships made out of origami, because origami, there's a lot of origami pieces that can like fold up and collapse, and I like the idea of having a fuel tank that's an origami paper fuel tank, and as you use it, the fuel tank shortens, right? And that means that anything attached to the fuel tank moves along with the fuel tank. So if you tape, say, a match or something, you'll move where that match is, and then when the fuel tank reaches a certain level of fullness, that match will just happen to impact something else, like, say, a flash paper connecting that fuel tank to the thing above it. So it'll automatically disengage and drop off. And if you had like a battery, you could do the opposite. And as the battery gets fuller, it expands. And you could once again have something that is attached to the battery or that the battery bumps into. And I really like that kind of mechanical machinerying. But at the end of the day, I couldn't really figure out a way to make it fun. So I didn't go for it. There's no particular reason it had to be origami, I suppose. But it was just a really fun idea. And then, of course, you could do things like extend out solar panels, unfolding solar panels. I think that's what actually gave me the idea in the first place. So just some fun ideas. But I was just using the aesthetic of origami. They weren't actually made out of folded paper. or, you know, folds in general. I forgot that I'd built this. This looks so much better than it used to. Maybe I should record some footage of that. Let's go ahead and just adjust the exact position of our head effect. So what we've got here is, I guess it's not going to work because it's not counting as part of the object, but the spotlight is in the wrong spot. It's just not quite far enough up and back. So in order for us to actually put the spotlight in the right spot, this is like the right spot physically speaking, but we actually want to move it up to point to Y and maybe 0Z. Let's go ahead and do it. That'll just give us a little bit better visibility with our spotlight. We should also add in a cookie, if we can find a cookie. Colt Zero says, I want to make an escape room game with an origami aesthetic, an old origami folding playing into the actual mechanics. I'm not very good at those kinds of games, either in design or in play, so I don't have any advice for you, but go for it if that's what makes you happy. You know, if that's the sort of thing that you like, then it's certain to be a better setup than if you were making a game you didn't like. Just got to make sure that you keep it small enough to actually make. It's very easy to overscope. Oh, that's much more realistic. Yeah, this is pretty good. I kind of like this. But I'm just about ready to stop. I'm going to go ahead and take some video after I sign off. You don't want to see my video taking. It's quite clunky. And also, I wouldn't be able to take smooth video if I am already streaming smooth video. Not that I think I'm actually only streaming at like 16 frames a second or whatever. Anyway, what are you? I must have dragged this, because you can drag these. I must have dragged this and it dragged wrong and it ended up in the back. That's kind of cute. It's okay. We'll deal with it some other day. All right, so I'm going to sign off for the day. Thanks for coming by. I might stream randomly at around this time other days, but I'm definitely going to try and hit up next Saturday unless I get sick. So I'll see you around, everybody. Thanks for keeping me company.